Great. Thank you all so much for joining. This is the Soil Not Oil Youth Rising panel, and I'm Mackenzie Feldman, and I'm super honored to be here today with Carmen Ramirez, Tiara Robinson, and Rachel Parent, and we will be talking to you about all things food and agriculture. And so first I'll just start off by introducing myself and then pass it on to them to introduce themselves. So I'm Mackenzie, and I'm the executive director and founder of Herbicide Free Campus, and we are an organization working to eliminate pesticides from schools and work with groundskeepers to transition to organic land management. And I also do work as a food research assistant for Data for Progress, doing farm regenerative agriculture policy and land access policy for the Green New Deal. And let's start with Carmen. Do you want to take it away?
Yeah, hello. Thanks for the opportunity for this platform. My name is Ramirez. I'm a student research assistant for UC Berkeley's COSECHA study and a pesticide regulation advocate.
Awesome. Sierra, do you want to go next?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Sierra Robinson from Vancouver Island, Canada, and pronouns she, her, hers. And yeah, I'm a permaculture teacher. I do regenerative work, like regenerative design in my communities. Yeah, I've been doing this work since I was 8 years old, so it's been 10 years now, and it's pretty exciting. And I work really closely with the organization Earth Guardians, which is a youth-led organization, and I'm also one of the 15 youth plaintiffs that are suing the federal Canadian government on climate change, and that's a pretty exciting thing in my life right now. And yeah, pass it back to Mackenzie.
And Rachel.
Hi, everyone. Thank you as well. I'm really honored to be here and share a panel with such lovely and amazing people. My name is Rachel. I'm the founder of Kids Right to Know, a nonprofit organization, and we're based out of Toronto, Canada. We focus on teaching kids about the importance of healthy eating and the impact that our food has on the world around us, from climate change to our pollinators dying off. We started this work 10 years ago as well, and it has been such an incredible journey seeing how over the past 10 years, through everyone's collective effort, our food system continues to change and how people's behaviors and ideas about food continue to adapt. So I'm excited to be here and see what conversations we have today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And actually, Rachel, I want to start with you. Talk to us about the big picture. Why food? Why is this an issue you care about? And how did you find yourself, working on this issue at such a young age? And why does this matter to everyone? Why should we all care about this issue?
I think food is such a critical part of all of our lives. We often don't realize how much we're touched by food every single day, but the reality is we all have to eat. And what we're putting in our bodies, although it is supposed to be nourishing us, at this point, it's poisoning us. I found out about GMOs in our food system when I was 11 and was just absolutely shocked by the idea that even though we have very little knowledge about the genome, very little knowledge about the potential implications of genetic engineering, we are patenting and owning nature, and in many ways destroying nature. As I started to find out how deeply linked our food system was to things like our pollinators dying off, the destruction of our rainforest to grow genetically modified soy, land grabs in Africa, all these mass issues that really became not just a food issue, but a human rights issue, an environmental issue, a climate issue, and a personal issue, because we're not given the right to know what we put in our bodies, the right to choose what we nourish ourselves with. I felt the need to take action. So that's how my activism sort of birthed, and it was by accident, because if I hadn't run across the word GMO, I wouldn't be where I am today. But I think, as with all activism, things start off small, and for me it was a Twitter account, and that developed into creating Kids Right to Know, our nonprofit, as well as Gen Earth, which is our environmental event platform. So it's really important that we take action on food, because if we don't have the right to know what we're putting in our body because we don't have GMO labeling, if we don't have the right to choose foods without pesticides, this is really a human right issue that is affecting every single one of us every day.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it was so fun to meet you in person last year and do this panel together. And I forgot to say this in the beginning, but just wanted to thank Miguel for being able to, and all the volunteers to put this on. And I think it's so awesome that even with everything remotely, we're still able to have this community, and it's really awesome to be able to share this space with you again, and to share this space with our other panelists. So thank you, Miguel, and everyone for your hard work on this. Kind of going off of what Rachel said, wanted to bring it to you, Carmen, and kind of, distilling everything that Rachel talked about, that's all these problems in our food system, and distilling it down to the local level. Can you tell us a little bit more about the study that you mentioned, and what it means, and everything that you were working on in your experience?
Yeah, so I was part of the COSECHA study for 3 years. It was a 3-year cohort study. I was between 15 and then 17 when I ended, and it was a youth-led research study that was a sub-study of chamacos, which is more well-known among most communities. That one studied pregnant field workers and their children for the span of 18 years, and it's still ongoing. So what happened in that is that I'm a chamacos child. I was part of that study. So when I was 14, I was approached to do the COSECHA study, where we wanted to keep exploring the possible correlation of pesticides harming people in our community, because the Salinas Valley, we're called the salad bowl of the world. We use a lot of pesticides to grow our produce. Just like, in California, there's millions of pounds of pesticides used every year, and 185 million to be precise, and 7 million of those are probable or possible carcinogens. Now, in the Salinas Valley, from information from 2016, we used more than 9 million pounds, with about 450,000 being linked to breast cancer. So our main funder for COSECHA was the California Breast Cancer Research Program. So from there, we were just really worried about, like, what harm can this be causing to not only field workers in our valley, but their families. And I come from an agriculture family myself, so growing up and seeing my dad, he would come home and he would just like throw up in the backyard. His nails would come off completely, like his eyes would be bloodshot. So I couldn't not become a part of the study. And our study examined 100 girls in the Salinas Valley who lived near fields, so we can sort of track and see if there were detectable factors that contributed to either higher or lower pesticide levels, both within the home but also in the body.
Wow, yeah. And we'll have more information at the end of how you can contribute to support the next studies that will be taking place. Thank you for that. And Sarah, you're really focused on the solutions, teaching permaculture and a farmer yourself. It's really impressive how you got started with this at such a young age. Can you talk about that? How did you get started in this? Why did you choose this livelihood for yourself? And why are you so passionate about regenerative agriculture?
Yeah, okay, thank you. It's a big topic, and I think that food, like Rachel was saying, food is something that we all have in common. We all have to eat it all, and whether that impacts our bodies in a positive way or a negative way is something really important that we need to look at. But also the world in general, like thinking outside of ourselves, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of pressures and stress and toxicity in the world, like beyond just our own bodies and what we're putting into ourselves. Like our industrial agriculture systems are some of the most destructive systems on the planet for our climates and for other species. And there's so many different studies and like different documents that you can read about how like farmers would go and spray fields and then entire species would die out. Like throughout history, that's kind of been a reoccurring thing. And also throughout history, the agriculture systems are what it has made or has either continued that civilization forward or has stopped that civilization, depending on how they farmed and how in tune with nature it was versus fighting against it all the time. And I think people have this weird thing where we've fallen into this capitalistic, toxic, industrialized way of farming and growing our food that is hurting us and the planet and everyone else around us. And I kind of realized this at a really young age when I was like 8 years old, and I started hearing about all these problems in the world. I heard about climate change. I thought it was just polar bears at first. Like, I was like really devastated about polar bears dying, until I realized it was also the forest in my backyard being cut down to create farmland and to grow food, or it was the orca whales in my community, because I live on a little island here, that were dying off. And I was also personally being impacted by it, and in like a lot of ways. And so I was devastated and heartbroken and really depressed at a really young age, which I think is something that a lot of people are seeing now. And so I knew I had to do something, and it was kind of by chance that I went to this permaculture course that my mom was she's like, hey, Sierra, I'm going to like this little gardening thing. Do you want to come sit in the background and you can doodle? I don't have a babysitter, so you kind of don't have a choice. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll come and sit in the background. And throughout the talk, people started talking about care for the earth, care for the future, care for people, and these ethics and principles around something called permaculture and regenerative design. And I was just like hooked in, and I was like, this is a toolbox of solutions and possibilities that we could use to help shape our future in a better way. Instead of thinking that there's only this one way of doing things that is hurting people so badly, what if we use these tools and this knowledge that has been passed down for generations, and really started bringing that into our lives, and how we look at how we design our own personal lives, but also how we design our food systems and how we take care of like our wider communities. And so I was just really excited, and have been using those principles and ethics in my life ever since. And yeah, so I got into teaching it, talking about it more, and I encourage you all to, I think a lot of people here listening probably already know about permaculture and know about the devastations of our industrial food systems, but I just encourage to, like, when you start to feel really down or upset about the state of the world, going back to like those beautiful communities that are really holding space, like this conference, and holding space for these important conversations to happen, because that's where a lot of hope is, and that's where those resources are to really create those changes you need to in the world. And I'll pass it back to you, Mackenzie.
Yeah, thank you. How did you go from learning about it to teaching? How did you take that next step, and what does the teaching look like?
I just was a really bossy, loud-spoken little kid, and I was people couldn't stop me from talking about it once I found out about it. So it kind of went from that. I have done a TED Talk called Beyond Sustainability, A Call for Regeneration. Not self-promoting myself or anything here, but I was just this little kid that was obsessed with my chickens in my backyard. I loved like climbing trees, being in nature. I saw those things were in danger, wanted to protect them. And then once I found out about solutions, I was like, okay, this is something that I can start to share with my friends. And my friends got tired of listening to me talk about it all the time. And but I realized that there were communities, people that were interested in learning about similar things. And so I joined those, and under the mentorship of lots of incredible permaculturists, community organizers, environmental activists, social justice activists, I kind of started to develop my own voice and my own story, and what I want to stand up and fight for and protect, which is mostly just like my family, my planet, and my future. So yeah,
just some small things like our planet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the sense of place that you talked about is really powerful, and how you were seeing firsthand effects in your community and how that inspired you. And Carmen, I'm interested with the study, once you kind of learned the outcomes from the study, how did you then take that information and distill it down to your community? Oh, wait, your audio, I think you're on mute.
Okay, thank you. So what our study found out was that there were multiple factors that contributed to having higher or lower traces of pesticides within the home. A few of them being if you have a carpet, because carpet tends to absorb a lot more particles in the air. And, we don't really, at least Latinx and Hispanic communities who are of lower income, we don't have the money to keep having the carpets professionally cleaned, like deep cleaned, to know with certainty that there's nothing in the carpet. So people who have carpets, of course, the girls who we studied lived near fields. So whenever there would be planes coming in and spraying the pesticides over the fields, and you have your window open, the wind would carry that into your household. As well as people who kept pesticides such as like herbicides and insect repellents inside their home. also had higher rates. So we found that the solution, or at least one of the solutions, was that homes that had doormats at their front door had lower traces. So we decided to support our community by ordering 1,000 custom printed mats by a fourth generation family that made them out of repurposed coconut husks. So that was a really, really neat detail. And we also did, we wanted to make our study accessible to everyone regardless of age, language. So we did things that not only specifically targeted like scientific communities or adults, parents, we also catered to children. We did a lot of tabling events that had little raffles and games for them. What was really a hit with them was we did 10 educational puppet shows for kids all over the county, either in person or through Skype or pre-recorded video. And among the most beautiful ones that we did was we did a mural for the community. We partnered with a company called Hijos del Sol, which is Children of the Sun, is what it means. And they did a really beautiful illustration that we helped design with Hispanic and Latinx art styles, which really resonated with the community, and it's still on display to this day. So yeah, really what we did to support the community was not only educate the community by reaching out to their children, reaching out to the adults, parents, but we also tried our best to help them become a part of the solution by having doormats and preaching that, you should definitely wash your clothing separate to that of your children, to that of other family members, as to not cross-contaminate and just keep the cycle of pesticides going within the household. And as well as just pushing, be conscientious about what you buy. It's alarming how readily available it's easy for people to get insecticides or herbicides from like whatever store, and people don't think to look in the back. They're not interested in the ingredients, really. Not a lot are. So be really conscientious of what you're bringing into your home, because you don't have to be a field worker to be exposing yourself to pesticides, which is one of the misconceptions we hear a lot, that like, oh, well, I don't work in the fields, I don't have family members who work in the fields, like, oh, I'm good. No, that's not the truth. If you're buying products from stores and you're using it in your house, you're exposing your children, pets, other family members, as well as if you're buying produce and you're not washing it correctly. I understand that buying organic or from locally grown farms isn't always accessible, both like physically or financially, but those areas tend to have a more tangible map of like how they were grown, like what compost was used and how it was harvested, versus if you take a box of strawberries to a field and you ask them what chemicals were sprayed on this, they're not very likely to tell you. So that's how we helped our community. And I'll pass back to you, Mackenzie.
Yeah, thank you. Speaking of stores that are selling herbicides, my organization and Rachel's organization, we're doing a campaign right now to get Home Depot and Lowe's to kick Roundup off the shelves. So maybe someone can put that in the, Mom, if you're watching this, can you copy it into the Facebook chat or the comments so people can look at that? I'm not sure if she's watching, but if so, can you put that in the link, Mom?
You can also Twitter and find it on both of our Twitters.
Yes, we can put our Twitter handles at the end. Thank you. That's super, super powerful. Did it change, Carmen, your, how you thought about the world? Had you thought about these chemicals before, and how did you react once you learned the outcomes from the study just in your daily life?
Yeah, so like I said, I grew up in the Chamaco studies since I was little, so I was exposed to the scientific aspect of pesticide exposure and its damaging effects, especially on my community. We're called the salad bowl of the world, so it's really not hard to guess like how agriculturally dependent we are. But also just seeing it in like my dad, like I said before, like he'd come home and he'd just be sick. Yeah. And, after he stopped working in the fields, he didn't have any of that. So it was fair to say that like we have very strong beliefs that it was because of the fields that were causing that. But yeah, it was just like, I'd always kind of thought about it in the back of my mind just because I grew up so much with it. But definitely working in the study made me more conscientious of how little people know about pesticide exposure and how easy it is to pick it up. Like I had people saying precisely like the misconception of like, oh, well, I don't work in the fields. I don't have family members there. I'm good. But we really need to start being more Asking more questions, being a little bit more picky on which products we allow in our households, not only for us, but to everyone around us. And just like in your story about the herbicides, like don't pick up the ball once it falls in the grass. They're telling the volleyball group not to do that, but they're not telling the kids who are walking through the grass to get to class. There's kids who sit down to like have lunch. They're bringing their pets. There's kids who like put everything in their mouth, and they're not telling them. So it's like a giant like spider web of issues, and at the core is pesticides and harmful chemicals.
Yeah, and I don't think I would have reacted strongly when they even told us on the volleyball team, except for the fact that I grew up in Hawaii, and Hawaii is ground zero for industrial agriculture, and similar to the Salinas Valley, they spray a bunch of pesticides because they do all the GMO corn seed testing there, so they're testing the seeds to see if they're resistant to pesticides. And so there were communities right near the Monsanto testing sites that were all getting cancer and birth defects. And so I think if I didn't follow that growing up and like going through high school, meeting the activists that were in that fight, I wouldn't have even probably known what an herbicide was or that was dangerous. So I think, yeah, it definitely is something that we need to be, people, when I tell people about our organization, they don't even think that chemicals are sprayed in the grass. You just are trusted to believe that parks and schools are safe, and you would never think that you're being exposed to these, carcinogens. And yeah, just going off of that, I think making a stand can be kind of scary sometimes when you're talking about these big corporations and what you're up against. And Rachel, you've just been really inspiring to me through the years watching you stand up to corporate power, and I would love to just give you some space to talk about that. And how did you step into that role as a thought leader that does stand up to corporations from such a young age? And do you have advice for young people who maybe are afraid to speak their minds when it comes to these powerful corporations in our system?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's really unfortunate that we live in a world where us as young people have the responsibility to try and better the environment, to try and better our health. The reality is we shouldn't have to deal with toxic pesticides and chemicals in our food every single day. There shouldn't be cases where people are exposed to these chemicals and are getting cancer on such a mass level. Really, this is a case of ecocide and genocide in a way, because we're killing people with these poisons, and it's being forced upon us. So it's really unfortunate that that's the case, but we do have to take action, and it's important. I know a lot of people face burnout, especially thinking about activism and the fact that we do have to stand up. We're facing mass climate issues, water issues, food issues. Everywhere we look, there's problems. But if we don't take action, this continues to progress. And I think it's a really wonderful thing that activism can actually provide hope and provide inspiration in our own lives. I feel like activism gave me an outlet to be able to say that at least I feel I'm doing something about it and I can take action. So that's where a lot of my hope and inspiration comes from. And when we look at these massive, powerful organizations and people out there, they need to be held accountable. I remember you told me to talk a little bit about this, so I'll just briefly mention it. When I was 14, Kevin O'Leary, if you're not 100% familiar with him, he's on Shark Tank, which is an investment show in the United States. At the time, he had a show in Canada, and he said that anyone marching against Monsanto was stupid, and that if they didn't like GMOs, they should just stop eating. And I was absolutely outraged by this statement, the fact that big corporations and the ultra-rich could decide what we eat and what we don't eat was something that really deeply upset me. But beyond that, we all have the right to be activists. We all have the right to choose what food we nourish our bodies with. So I decided to publicly challenge him to debate me on national television. And I did that simply through YouTube, going onto social media, using the tools that I had available to me as a young person with no resources. And I had no idea that he would accept. I remember as a kid, I was not necessarily treated the best in school. I had some bullying experiences. And I got in the car. My mom was picking me up. And she was like, I have some good news and bad news, and it's the same thing. Kevin O'Leary accepted your demand for a debate, and I was absolutely shocked. But I think the biggest thing, no matter what, going into it, I was calm, realizing that it didn't matter whether I did poorly or really well, it was about creating awareness. And even if you could change one person's mind on the issue. So to date, it has about 11 million views. And it's just been such an incredible journey seeing that happen. But I think every one of us can do that in our own way. We all have social media. We all have capabilities of being able to spread messages so far and wide. And if you're feeling hopeless, if you're feeling like you can't have a part in activism, we need you. You may not feel like leading a march or organizing an event or creating your own organization, but there is a capacity and a space for every single person in activism. And I think that's so important to remember. It is scary going against big corporations. I crashed a Monsanto shareholder meeting, and that was absolutely terrifying. But the experience that I got from that was incredible. And I encourage anyone who has the capability, join activism in your own way. If you're good at graphics, if you're good at video, if you're good at writing, that is activism, and we need you involved.
Thank you so much. And we can give plugs at the end to, get involved in our organizations, and there's so many out there that are doing awesome work. Speaking of going up against big, powerful institutions, Sierra, can you talk to us a little bit about this lawsuit of you challenging the government for climate change? That's incredible, and we'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, totally. So this is actually kind of new to me. I started this, the lawsuit was launched or filed October 2019. But yeah, so pretty much our government in Canada has knowingly been contributing to climate change through subsidizing fossil fuels and continuing to promote these big projects that have been proven by scientists that they are negatively impacting or contributing to climate change and making it worse. And also when our industrial agriculture systems and so many things in our country are linked to making climate change worse or contributing to it, and our government is knowingly doing that, we're saying that they're violating our rights. So climate change has hurt me personally, and it's kind of each of the plaintiffs each of the plaintiffs have their story about how climate change has impacted them, and mine is really on my farming as well. In my community, we had some cows for a couple of years. I was raising my animals, but the droughts in the summer were so bad that the well would run completely dry from these droughts, and our neighbor, we'd have to go to the neighbors to get water, or we'd have to decide to plant more drought resistant crops because we didn't have enough water to grow all the things we wanted to, or deciding whether we wanted to grow lettuce that year or give water to the cows. And so it was choices like that that made me realize, and I'm okay, I'm this young white girl in a community that is dealing with these issues. What about marginalized communities that are also facing these things, that are probably feeling the impacts of these things a lot worse than me? But our federal government has violated my charter rights to life, liberty, and security of person, and to equality, and my public trust rights by contributing to the climate crisis. And that's pretty much what the whole lawsuit is going on. And yeah, it's kind of something that I could talk about for a really long time, but the federal government has known for a really long time about climate change, and they haven't really done much. They say, Canada, people think about our country as this really green, great place where everyone's oh, there's so much peace and harmony, and you guys must be doing so great. Look at all this equality. We're going to use this country as an example for what we want to be like. And it makes me mad because our country, there's a lot of lies behind that. And yes, it's a beautiful place in a lot of ways, and there's beautiful wildlife, but it's all a lot of it is endangered by these big corporations and by these and our government isn't really doing enough to help protect these things for us and protecting our resources, which are water and our air. And as a young person, I'm only 18 years old, and as a young person, my rights are being violated disproportionately compared to other generations that are older, because my future is at stake. And so yeah, that's what the plaintiffs are saying, and it's going really well so far. We're really very excited about it. So yeah, awesome. It's scary though too. It's a big, it can be scary. So yeah.
And what is it called? It's different from the Juliana one, or it's a
yeah
with Juliana.
Juliana is the sister case in the
cool.
state.
Yeah.
It's La Rose versus Her Majesty the Queen. Sounds very fancy.
That's awesome. And you touched on this a little bit, but just the, you mentioned kind of the privilege that you carry and how these issues disproportionately affect different communities. And this is just a question for everyone. I think just wanted to give you the space to talk about in your issue, how are you looking at this through an environmental justice lens? And maybe for people who aren't as familiar with environmental justice, just to kind of break that down a little bit and talk about, how these issues are disproportionately affecting, BIPOC communities, and what can we do about that, and what is our role and privilege? I know with our organization, it's easy to blame the groundskeepers that are spraying pesticides because they're exposing us, but at the same time, they're predominantly people of color who are overworked and underpaid. And we tell our students, you have this privilege as students who are attending a university to stand up, and you have a voice, and you can advocate for people, and keep them safe. And so, would love to just give you a space to touch a little bit about that in your work. And that's for anyone to go.
I guess I'll go first. For me, the real challenge was I was 15 when I began doing the study. So it was really hard to get people to, I guess, believe me that I was doing all of this work with them, that I was doing something truly impactful with the community, just because I feel like at the time there wasn't a lot of youth leaders that were very well known. I mean, of course, now we are thankfully in a century that is very aware. We're not just, sitting back and allowing things to happen, whether we're protesting climate change or anything in between. We're definitely becoming a more outspoken generation. But at the time, it was really hard to get our findings across and get people to really listen, because we're just a group of 15-year-old kids. It's like, well, what can we possibly be doing? But I think in terms of environmental justice, like Rachel was saying, we shouldn't really have to be asking companies what's in our food, what's in our cleaning products and things like that. We should, one, being transparently told about what's on there. But two, if there's people like me who are participating in studies that are actively working to find evidence to support the claims that there is definitely some damaging health effects of using these things, and there's companies and people in general that are still saying no, well, if you don't want to, if you don't want GMOs, to stop eating. It's very black and white, and I feel like we should definitely be exploring the gray area of, let's come to a middle ground. Let's come to an agreement that we need to be doing better as a community and as a world, literally. We should all be supporting each other and doing our best to be transparent and clean about products, just, like food, and how you were saying, herbicides, insecticides. There's a lot of things that are so available to the public, and we're never going to question them. But I think we really should, environmental justice, we really should be asking more questions. We should be more inquisitive, be more on the lookout for things that could potentially be harming us. And I'll open the floor back to everyone else.
Yeah, thank you for that so much. Something that I recently have learned through my different communities of people, Earth Guardians was the organization I was working with that specifically is teaching me this. And I learned that environmental justice issues and social justice issues, they aren't any different. And that as an environmental activist, I called myself an environmental activist for so long, but I realized that protecting the planet is protecting people. And when you look at people, we're not any really different from the environment either in those ways. Our food systems impact the planet, they impact us. Water, if we think about water security in our communities, that impacts the planet, that impacts us. And if we think about racial justice and social justice issues too, we all need to play our part in helping create more equality too. And that just means standing up and using our voices and our platforms and our privilege to create any type of change that we can. And like Rachel was saying too, using whatever medium that you have, if your passion is art, paint a picture of the world you want to see. If you're a musician, write a song. If you have these different talents and skills, find a way to like utilize those in creating a better world, because I guarantee that everyone has something that they really deeply care about and love. Like if you think about it, maybe it's your family, maybe it's yourself, maybe it's your pet dog, but you've got something that you want to fight for and protect. And I think that's what I constantly am having to remind myself, because I get depressed really easily. I deal with like mental health issues and stuff, and it's kind of hard not to. And when I think in the world that's so messy and so insecure in a lot of ways, like there's so much going on and there's so many issues, but these issues are really connected, and it's a really big system that's like really big systems that we're going up against, like systemic racism and climate change. These are big things, and in order to kind of tackle those things, we need to be able to create changes in our own lives, and we need to have communities that support us in doing that. And yeah, so just like using whatever skills you have to create those changes in the world, I think is how I'm planning on tackling it. And yeah, I'll pass it back to Mackenzie.
I think it's a really good question, and I do think the food movement in many ways has left out a lot of communities, and it's getting better, and we are becoming more inclusive, and especially in a movement where we need to have everyone involved as much as possible. I think a lot of that also stems to the fact that our food system itself has been incredibly violent towards our environment and towards people for so long now. Violent, appropriating land, exploiting people, and these are just small examples of the impacts that this is having on such a global level. To tell you a really quick story, I was in touch with a tribe in the Amazon, and they were saying that big corporations had come in and promised new technology, new education, new opportunities if they would grow genetically modified soy. And so they agreed that they would grow this, but because there were no contracts and they started growing genetically engineered plants that are patented, the big corporations were allowed to come in and take away their land because of patent infringement. And these land grabs are happening all over the world, especially in BIPOC communities. Within environmentalism, within our food system, it is continuously affecting marginalized communities more. We look at our food system, and it's very similar to even the way we produce our industrialized fossil fuels. The fact that we have areas like Chemical Valley in Canada, where BIPOC communities are surrounded by refineries and are being poisoned by the chemicals used to make fossil fuels. It's the same thing time after time after time, where big corporations are taking advantage of already marginalized communities. So I think the biggest key, which everyone has already said, is becoming more inclusive, making sure that we are lifting up the voices of BIPOC communities, giving that space, allowing space like these for people who need it most, and making sure that those stories are told. I think stories often go untold of those who really need a platform to be able to share that. So making sure that we have those opportunities. And it's more important now than ever that we're taking care of our bodies and making sure everyone has access to healthy and safe food. And unfortunately, in BIPOC communities, it's been shown that healthy food is less and less available in comparison to other communities. So that's something that we all have to work towards.
Yeah. And with coronavirus in the U.S., Black Americans are dying at 3 times, Black and Latino are dying at 3 times the rate of white Americans. So when you couple that on top of these places that people are living, like Cancer Alley or Chemical Valley, just the risks just get multiplied. Thank you, everyone, for that. And I think we have, I just want to leave some time for questions from the audience. But before that, just want to kind of wrap up with, what does your work look like now? What are you excited about, and how can people get involved with this? Maybe people who are younger and want to join youth organizations, or maybe people who are older and don't know what to do. How can people plug in?
Something that I'm super excited about is this new project I've been working on called Chasing Change, and it's helping to document and share stories. It's a youth media project, and it's with one of my best friends is working on it with me. And we are, we're doing interviews, we're collecting stories, we're really like creating this space to share art and poetry and music and all of these things that are creating change in the world, and like really focusing on some solutions and hope, because there's so many bad things in the world, but there's also so many like powerful, positive, like beautiful things happening too. And when you share those stories of like resilience and resistance, it really inspires people. And that's what inspires me, is like meeting people like you guys, or like meeting people who are doing this work. And we're also like, through Chasing Change too, we're talking about like, what do you do when you get burnt out? What are some tools and resources we can use for when we're starting to like feel how heavy this work is too. And so that's what I'm kind of excited about. And you can find that on Instagram, or on Facebook as well, Chasing Change. And it's going to be a 4-part series. And then if you find me on Instagram, sierra.r.r, I share my most of my activism stuff there, and Earth Guardians is the main youth organization I'm a part of, and it's earthguardians.org if you want to look that up. And yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And how has COVID impacted your work? Were these projects, was Chasing Change something you were working on before? I mean, I think it's obviously there's so many awful things happening right now in this pandemic. But at the same time, it is inspiring to hear how people have transitioned to continue fighting. There was that, you've been able to do that project online, which sounds awesome. Was that going on before, or is that?
It was. We were going to do some more traveling, and actually my friend who's working on it with me lives in the States. And so we've just been on a lot of Zoom meetings, like recording those and sharing stories through that. And if I have friends like in those communities that are doing the work and marching the streets and stuff through the States and through Canada and different places, we can record those and have those sent in to us. And so, yeah, it's a big process, but COVID has given us a lot of time to like to sit and internally reflect on what kind of world we want to see. And it's given people the chance to like think about, let's like redefine this future that we want for ourselves, and what's that going to look like, and what choices are we going to have to make to get there. So I think it's like there's some beautiful things within that have happened, but it's definitely a very difficult issue as well. So
yeah, totally. I love that, kind of being able to think about the world we want to see. Hey, Rachel or Carmen, love to hear from you what you're excited about right now.
Yeah, so I'm just excited about how we are still going to be continuing to be doing a lot more studies on this. Like, there's a lot more avenues we still have yet to explore in regards to the effects of pesticide exposure on the human body, and in turn of that, an entire community. Just like, we're still looking for funding at the moment. So, you know, anything helps. If anyone would like to contact us, you can go to our website. It's cerch.berkeley.edu. Or you can contact James Nolan at Nolan, JNOLAN.berkeley.edu. I'm sorry. But, you know, just reaching out. If you ever find us in tabling events, be like more than welcome to stop on by. Knowledge is free. You know, like, it just costs you nothing to just come by and listen, learn something new, maybe pass it on to friends and family. But yeah, I'm just overall really excited that we still have a lot more work to do. Like fortunately, this line of work isn't over. You know, we haven't completed our studies yet, and I'm just excited to see what new youth activists we can bring into this.
Awesome. And maybe if you want to put that link and that email in this chat, then maybe Miguel can put that in the Facebook chat as well, so people listening could reach out. Thank you for that. That's super exciting. Rachel, what about you?
There's always a lot going on. I found that during the time of COVID, it's been incredibly busy, and I think everyone that I've talked to has found that experience as well. It has given us more time to sort of reflect on exactly the world we want to see and what we can accomplish together. One of the things that I'm excited to be working on, it sounds like it's not quite related, but I'm telling you it is. We're working on creating a monarch conservation space. So a couple years ago, I started working with monarch butterflies Over the past couple decades, they experienced a 90% decline in population, and this is largely due to spraying of Roundup and glyphosate because it's killing out their food supply, as well as insecticides. So we decided to create a physical space, which we're hoping to get soon, to be able to bring out people from the public to experience watching these monarch butterflies go through the phases, to learn more about what's actually causing the death of this species, because it is so deeply interconnected with our food system, and bring the idea of the damage our food system is creating to a personal level that everyone can understand. When they see a butterfly, when they see a monarch, and relate it back to the fact that they are dying because of pesticides and herbicides, they're dying because of our food system, creating that connection on such a personal level can create a lot of change. So that's what we're hoping to do, creating this basically restoration space where we can regenerate the soil, where we can plant lots of milkweed, where we can bring people out, show films about monarchs, about GMOs, about pesticides, herbicides, and be able to raise the monarchs in that space. Over the past couple of years, we've raised and released about 2,000. So we're hoping to continue to help the population. We also have some new campaigns that'll be coming up in the fall, working on some things. Can't announce anything yet, but we're excited about the possibility of keeping going. And I think the biggest thing is collaboration. There's so much that we can all do together to be able to work on these issues, to be able to fight for a better world. So if you want to get involved with us, or if your organizations want to collaborate, you can contact us. Our website is kidsrighttoknow.org. You can also go to our Twitter, which is Rachel's News, Instagram, we're there as well, Facebook. And I encourage you to contact us and get involved, because we're always looking to expand and to collaborate and invite new people into this movement.
Awesome, thank you. And if you put your links there, then I think Miguel will be able to put it out for everyone. And also, if you want to link the Action Network.
Well, I am not controlling Facebook. I'm sorry, I'm not controlling Facebook, but they already shared it in.
Okay, your sound cut out.
We're gonna do something to. So,
okay.
Are you gonna go into questions? 3 minutes or less.
Okay. Your sound kind of cut out, but I think we'll get it done. So, sounds good. Is there any other? If there's questions from the audience, we can take those. Not sure how we get that, but if there are any.
Well, I have a question. It's for you, Mackenzie. Okay. I have a question for you about what are you exactly doing these days, if you are in Hawaii or you are in California, and what do you expect for the next 6 months after this crisis?
Yeah, I went back to Hawaii for a bit when the pandemic started, but I've come back. So I'm in San Francisco. Wish Soil Not Oil could be in person. But yeah, our organization, we've had to kind of, we've taken the past, since COVID started, really thinking about how we can reorganize, because so much of our work is dependent on planning work days and working with groundskeepers, which is still happening at some of the schools where students are still living near school, or some of our students are actually still at school. So they've been picking weeds alongside groundskeepers. But we're doing a lot more investigative corporate research, which is really exciting. And we've launched at a couple of high schools, and we've rolled out a series of training. So to be part of Herbicide Free Campus, we have like a fellow at each school that's leading this campaign. So we're doing a whole training series on teaching them about the history of pesticides, racial justice in pesticides, how to be a leader and lead this campaign. So we're doing a lot of online stuff, and all of our staff have always been remote, so it's been fine over Zoom. And I think in some ways administrators are more readily available than ever, because they're all on Zoom, and it's easier to make comments at regents meetings and things like that. So we're going to do a really strong push when school starts, even with students being at home, to push for at the UCs, pushing for all organic by 2025 in landscaping, and just have a lot of other cool things going on. We got a blog started. We're training all of our students on how to write op-eds and plugging them in their communities. So we have 4 schools in New York, and we're partnering with the Black Institute, which is a Black-led think tank in New York that's trying to pass a glyphosate bill in New York City. So we're going to be helping with testimony for that and getting that done. So that's what we're up to. And yeah, if there's no questions, if anyone else has any last minute things they want to share about, just kind of want to give you the last.
Maybe the very last question. I just read something that somebody posted, that what is the most important thing during the pandemic for you guys? And I think was an open question for the. We have actually 1 minute, but if somebody want to answer.
I can jump in. The question was, what do you think is the most important thing right now to do during the pandemic? And I think one of the most important things we can do is take care of our own bodies. As we were mentioning before, in BIPOC communities, they are significantly struggling more with COVID. And we look at the United States, 40% of people have underlying health conditions. We need to ask ourselves why that is. Is it connected to our food system? It absolutely is, because we are continuously poisoning ourselves with this food. So trying to transition to a better food system that benefits all, from consumers to farmers, demanding healthier food at more affordable prices, and making sure that to the best of our abilities we are nourishing our bodies. I think that's one of the best things we can do.
Awesome. I think this thing is going to cut off in like 10 seconds. So just wanted to say thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of this. And thanks to Miguel for this opportunity. And you all are amazing. And look forward to collaborating in the future.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. We're going to connect in the future. And I want to tell the audience that we're going to have like 1 minute break to connect Facebook.